Let's go. We're live. We're live. You ready? We're live.
Live, it's alive. It's alive.
Do it live. We'll do it live. Do it live. Yeah, we'll do it live.
And welcome everybody to the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Tyler Janke, a little show from Northern California. I hope you're joining us in today. On today's show, we are going to talk. Look, racing is ramping up in Europe, and so far it's been fantastic, bar for a tragic ending at the Tour of Poland. And we will discuss that, the dangers, the thrills of sprinting, and give you a breakdown of the incident in Poland with your favorite cycling / geologist / YouTube star. Yes, those are all a thing. Jeff Linder, the Ride of the Week, and I Heart the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Friday, August 7th, 2020. I'm Tyler Janke, and thank you for joining us today. All right, before we bring Jeff Linder in, I just thought I would tell you, yes, we are on the iHeart Radio app. So search for us under Between Two Wheels podcast. You could use the number 2 or TWO. Just watch out. There's a motorcycle one out there. They probably have more followers, but if you want, I've had many people join our show thinking it's that sudden rough awakening when they realize we're talking about Lycra. So let's bring in Jeff Linder. Jeff, how you doing? And welcome today.
Hey, good to be on, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I hope some people come in. They can ask some questions. We're going to go through some things here. They can ask some questions, give a little breakdown of what we're doing, maybe a discussion. This has been a pretty heated issue that we have online. But before we get there, for most people that know you probably know me, but most people, so I want to give you a little breakdown of who you are, just in case there's a random person out there that doesn't know who Jeff Linder is.
Well, I like your intro. That was a good intro. I think you covered most bases. But yeah, I'm a Bay Area guy. Picked up bike racing about a decade ago and really just got bit with the bug, and I've been pretty much obsessed with it ever since. And that kind of turned into a lot of this media that I produce, mostly on YouTube, NorCal Cycling, where it started just with breaking down race footage, and it's kind of going in different directions now. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. And P12 racer for Mike's Bikes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the different direction it's going? Because I've noticed a little bit of a change there. You've got a guest host with you quite often. And so just give us an overview of kind of where that is now. Some people say you've sold out. I don't know who those people are.
Yeah, I mean, you probably know this, Tyler. Producing content isn't free. It takes a lot of time, right, and it takes a lot of money. So it's nice to have sponsors, and I'm very selective with the sponsors that I decide I want to partner with. But on Team Mike's Bikes, we have a lot of close connections with Specialized. They're also headquarters is here in Morgan Hill, pretty close by. And so I've used their product for a long time. It's something I could stand behind. And then when they wanted to partner with doing some sponsored content on the channel, people don't like it, but also it means better content and more content on the channel that I can afford, frankly. So that's kind of the direction that's going. And the most recent thing was they had a bike release and they wanted me to help them showcase their new Tarmac SL7. So we did a kind of a first impression video. We're going to follow up with a longer term impression video. And I mean, what do you want? It's a $12,000 bike. Of course, it's fun to ride. It's fast and everything else. So yeah, that's where that's at.
Who does it? What do people? I mean, you and I talked to, and I think it was episode 133. If people want to go back, had a nice long interview with you. Great show, thanks. But if people want to know, there was a lot of, we talked about the animosity online and those kind of things. What are people saying that they don't like? They just don't like that you have money sponsor, or you're influenced now by this great bike company. I don't know what the.
I haven't gotten a whole lot of pushback from it. Of course, nobody wants to see an advertisement. I don't want to see advertisements either. But once you get into this space, you realize it's kind of the cost of doing business, because like I hire people to help me with this. Chris doesn't work for free, and videographers and editors. It's like it becomes a production. Again, Tyler, you probably know this, but a lot of people who enjoy the content but aren't making the content don't realize that a polished 10 to 12 minute video takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money. So I think a lot of people don't realize that, and they don't realize that it can only really progress if you have sponsors or some way to fund this, and sponsors, if they're giving your channel money, they want some representation, and that's an arrangement. So when I was working with Specialized, and I work with a performance bike too. there's a give and a take, and I think people just don't like to see an ad on the channel. They think I'm a sellout, but like I'm always going to be honest on my channel. I don't know. I don't know if you saw this, Tyler. I recently made a video about an action camera that was sent to me, and yeah, and I wasn't super nice with them, but I was brutally honest, and I was just really critical about the product because I want the best for the people that are watching my channel. It's an expensive sport already, so I want people to, spend their money wisely, and I'm not going to give them misleading advice. And if it's a review, it's my opinion. So take it or leave it.
Doing the podcast stuff, I've got tons of stuff over the years, and bike cameras, whatever, everything you're doing. One of the first things I'll do. My son the other night, he was just trying to buy something, and I'm like, figure it out, and then go look at some reviews, not just cheapest, because I found that a lot of the reviews really are helpful, even if it's sometimes paid content or they're given in the product, and they mention it. So no, I applaud you for that. Do you have an affiliate link for the SL7? I don't know if that would be, that's the way to really go, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have an affiliate link or anything like that. But if you want to learn more, obviously just go to Specialized. If you want to know my first impression, I made a video with Chris Reichert, my teammate and friend, about our first impression of the bike. But yeah, I mean, we're doing some ad spots on the channel where we give exposure to Specialized, and it is what it is. You can skip forward through it. It's only going to last about 40 seconds. So if you want to just cut straight to the content, skip forward 40 seconds, and there it is.
Right. And I always say, look, I will sell out. People want to give me stuff. You mentioned polished 10-minute videos. That's why I don't do polished videos. It's too much effort. No, it does take a lot of time. And we'll get into all this stuff, but it's always interesting to me that the behind the scenes. We were just saying Tyler Pierce, who puts out some fantastic, his Dirty Kansas video last year, I thought was really well done. And I couldn't imagine the time and effort and everything that goes into it. Because sometimes I just do these and I don't do much cutting and editing at all. So that's why we're going live. But anyway, I do appreciate your content, and you've obviously grown your channel. You've done really well with that. Some of that question I have real quick, and we'll go on. Obviously, it doesn't look like we're going to even have racing in the U.S. this year, or California specifically. Matter of fact, there was some racing down in Georgia, and then they were going to do some stuff down in Florida. And I think the USA Cycling just came out and said, we're not sanctioning these races. So those events have kind of have to pull off the board as far as being sanctioned. So you're just doing kind of the El Viso crit, I know. How is that going? Are you still doing it currently? Or do you not want to say on?
No. I stopped doing it. I'm going to wait for the numbers to come back down a little bit.
Yeah.
I did it after the kind of the first wave, or whatever we're calling it. The first bump, it settled down. They lifted some of the restrictions in our county. Our local ordinance said it's all right to go out in certain number of groups with certain restrictions, whatever, but they loosened it. So then I went out and did a couple of Alvisos, but then we had that second wave after Memorial Day or so. And that's when I have been more cautious and I've stayed in, but I still get sent content from Georgia or from Alviso or from other places. So I'm sitting on a lot of race content. I don't know the story behind it. I don't know if it's just a local practice crit. I don't know if it's just a hard group ride. I don't know if it's a sanctioned race, but it's competitive bike racing, and that's what I like talking about. So I gladly still accept that, and I'll talk about it on the channel.
Well, let's talk about, look, and then there are some people joining. If you guys have some questions, you want to put them, we'll put them up on the screen for what we're going to do here, or even something specific for Jeff. You want to know about some rocks or whatever, you can totally do it. Mark Tucker, just put it in there. I don't know if you can see this on the screen. Alabama Jordan races are still a go. So maybe they're still going, but I don't know if they're going to be sanctioned races, because it did kind of seem like there might be some question about that. But that's something we don't have any expertise on necessarily. Okay. So we're going to talk about the Tour of Poland. I thought we'd bring you in specifically because let's talk to a sprinter. Now, neither you or I are at this level, obviously, but we have eyes, we can see, and you do a lot of race breakdowns. So I thought this would be a great avenue for us to kind of walk through it. You told me you have not really seen much, or maybe just haven't been involved in all kind of the drama. There's been a lot online. I mean, there's everything from, Dylan Groeneweggen's a murderer to, look, it's Jakobsen. I saw this actually. Jakobsen looks like he initiated contact and his fault. I don't know. We'll walk through it. Your initial thoughts first, and what you've seen about this, and then we'll talk kind of from your sprinting angle as well.
Yeah, so Tyler asked me to come on and talk about the Tour of Poland sprint, and like you said, Tyler, I have been out of touch. So I'm actually coming at this with a pretty unique perspective, because I haven't been caught up in all of the media craze about what's been going on. I've seen the headlines, And then about 6 minutes before we went live, I went and looked at the sprint. So my perception isn't colored by every other commentator's input. So I kind of have this unique perspective. So I thought I wouldn't go read a bunch of headlines before doing this. So my first impression, and I feel like if people disagree with this, it's kind of crazy. Like Groenewegen obviously was at fault here. He was about to get beat, it looked like to me. I don't even think that's disputable either.
Right.
So he decided that he was going to shut the door on Jakobsen and push him up against the barriers. I guess there's no way to sugarcoat it. It looked like he just saw he was going to get beat and decided he didn't want that to happen. So he shut the door on him, which you're not allowed to do in a sprint. As far as I know, you have to hold a straight line. Right. And I was trying to, this is one of the most obvious things, and it's total failure on my part as far as the actual UCI rule. Now I did see here from Inner Ring website, the rule on sprinting. He says, here's the relevant rule. It's 2.3.036 on sprints. Riders shall be strictly forbidden to deviate from the line they selected when launching into the sprint, and in so doing, endangering others. So there's also a general rule on conduct. All license holders shall refrain from any acts of violence, threats, or insults, or any other improper behavior, or from putting the other persons in danger. So that's pretty straightforward. And, there's a history of, right. Go ahead. What do you think about the rule and how that plays out? Sure. Yeah. I mean, it sounded like he violated the first two parts of that rule, which were deviating from your line and putting somebody else in danger. Right. Because there is some, so like, when does the sprint start? Right. These aren't cut and dried. Like right. Nobody can say for sure when a sprint starts. That could be argued, but they were certainly mid-flight sprint. They were like maybe 50 meters to go, 25 meters to go. They were right close to the line. And that's when Groenewegen decided to deviate from his line and put somebody else in danger. So like, clearly he violated the rule, but there are some shades of gray in there. And the point I was going to make is, like, you can start your sprint. Let me see if I can try to describe this, and make a straight line diagonally across the road, and not extremely like you're not cutting across people's front wheels, but you can go towards like the apex of a corner if the finish was going through a corner or something. Or you can start your sprint and then go towards the barriers just to close that avenue, because there's a distinction, and sometimes it's nuanced, between physically endangering somebody by turning into them, like what Groenewegen did, right, versus closing an avenue which would otherwise be open. So if there's a space up the inside and you occupy that space before somebody else has the opportunity to, that's a good sprint technique, but you're not endangering anybody and you're not changing your line. Let me add. So Chris and Zimni, I got yours too. We'll add this too. So Chris Flower says, does the rule define what line is? And this goes exactly kind of to what you're saying, because as we've seen in racing, you have a land park as an example. The road kind of meanders, and we're not following the direct line down the middle all the way. There's kind of a short line, straight line cut that we're doing, which I think is to be expected, and it's what you would do. Now, this road in particular was just long and straight, but continue on that if there was more that you had. Well, you bring up a good point. And what does a straight line mean? I don't know. I mean, if the road is curving, is a straight line the line that the road takes, or is a straight line like a ruler, like just an actual straight line? And that's a good question. Well, actually, this does answer it, because let's look at it. Riders strictly forbidden to this is the important part, deviate from the lane they selected, which the launching into the sprint. So you're coming in. I guess if it's kind of a weave, but you're heading straight through, and that's weird, because if the line is going, if the road is bending a little bit, now we have a problem. And I would also say, and we'll get to the video, which kind of flesh some of this out. If Groenewegen's, because I went back through and there was some Buhani stuff. There's been Cavendish in the 2010 Tour de Suisse. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, where he just cuts across Hausler. Yep. I remember that. That was gnarly. Right, and that was interesting because it showed his carbon wheel bent in half, and then it sprung back. But the point on those ones, they're in the middle of the road, and you're just kind of going down. What makes this one horrific is the crashing into the barrier as it was, and exploding. They crashed right over the finish line. I mean, I think Jakobsen actually, they gave him the win, but Dylan, when he was on the ground, he was already over the finish line. Anything else on that? No, just the lane tells me that you're following the shape of the road. So if the road is curving, then you're following your lane with an A. Yeah, that's interesting though.
Yeah, it is. But I think that's probably the best way to do it. Okay, let's see if we can get this. You ready to watch some of this?
Go for it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So there's no real sound on this. And where's Groenewegen? So this starts from a little ways back. Maybe part of it is I heard it was super, super fast downhill. As you can see, the riders are flying into the finish. There's Groenewegen on our left.
Yeah, and Jakobsen's just got his number. Like, he's going to win this race. So here he starts to pass. And then Groenewegen right here is looking at him. And he knows what he's doing. And this is where he says, like, nope, not on my watch. And he kind of throws an elbow, too.
Yeah, it's hard to determine. And I would, that's bad. It's hard to determine the elbow because you remember the Cavendish Sagan crash. And here's another. Now, look, this has definitive lines drawn down the middle of the road, so it's kind of super easy to see any kind of deviation. Although, the road looks like it's got a little squiggle here too. But
straight. Okay, now changing his line, and just pushes him into the barriers. Now, I don't think he wanted to crash him out, but he wanted to win, and he was going to endanger somebody else. Like Jakobsen could have squeezed brakes, I'm sure, but sprinters in the last lap, not even sprinters. Let's take a step back. If you're a crit racer,
let me pause this right here.
It's impossible to think about anything else during a crit, right? You ever try to think about anything else? It's impossible. Now, a sprinter in the last 300 meters, all they're focused on is the line. Like, Jakobsen probably could have said, like, oh, you know what, and then squeezed brakes and been like, that's too sketchy, I'm out. But he was like, I'm about to win. And you got to remember too, these guys have their livelihood on the line. They're doing this to support themselves and their family. So
and he was already well committed. Let's look at this one from over top, though. This is what you made the point. And actually, Brian Zimney, he said it's hard to determine if Groenewegen knew Jakobsen was passing or not. Which
it looked like he peaked. I want to watch it again though, because like I said, I've been out of touch on this stuff. So I want to see if he peaked. It looked like he looked under his elbow, but
now I think Jakobsen started too late. But you can see here if you look, Groenewegen's full on sprint. He's Jakobsen's on his wheel, sitting down, and now he starts to go. Now it's not a big kick, but he gets stalled, and that move there. Okay,
without question, Jakobsen was going to win.
You think so?
Absolutely. Let's watch that again. If you don't mind.
Let's go all the way back and
so watch. He within 3 pedal strokes, he's already basically matching handlebars with Groenewegen.
Now obviously the barrier, and we'll talk about the barriers in a little bit, but
I think Jakobsen would have won, no doubt about that, if that barrier wasn't there.
Okay, so though they're just listening, you're gonna have to maybe check this out on YouTube. Jakobsen comes around the outside. He's obviously not coasting. Yeah, you're probably right.
The overhead shows it. The overhead shows it better because he starts to pass with, let's say, 50 meters to go, and then with 30 meters to go, less than halfway there, he's already on terms with him. That's the way I saw it.
You can see the road, how it looks like it's ramped down, but it was really downhill.
They were flying,
Yeah, they were really going, which we can talk about safety and issues as well. There was a video I saw from that person. It's a person that was so. Let's finish this. Sorry, I keep showing this crash. I just kind of want to see the lead up to it.
Do you have the overhead? Oh, there it is. Okay,
there you go. This is what you wanted. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think this shows it a little bit better. So Groenewegen takes the front right here. Jakobsen's still seated. That dude's got so much power too. So he's still seated. And then I think this is about 50 meters to go. Watch. Already he's basically matching handlebars with him. And there's still plenty of space.
Yeah.
I think he would have won. I mean, it wouldn't have been by a bike length or anything, but he would have won by a foot or two. He timed it perfectly, right? He's a world-class sprinter, and Groenewegen just went a little bit too early. And he knew it. I think that's the issue. He looked back, he knew it. He's like, oh, I'm about to lose. That's my interpretation.
So, Chris asked this question: how wide is a lane? Are lanes, and then it probably goes back to the rule. Are lanes marked? There are rules, but they're written in a manner that allows too much interpretation. Yes, I mean, because you've got a free-flowing thing. I think lane just means, hey, when you put your head forward and this is the direction you're going, for God's sake, stay in that lane.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Kind of stay in your lane type of thing. That's It's okay. So I saw another video. It was there was a cameraman on. If you're looking at the sprint from the finish on the left-hand side where Jakobsen went through the fence, there was a person just standing there videoing it, and right from the barrier, then there's a train track. So they were standing in the train track area there, and it wasn't. I don't know if that had much to do with anything other than there's not much room, even if you blow through the barrier, and that's probably why they had it such built up. But then Jakobsen, as soon as he hits it, you can slow the video down. His helmet's off like ASAP. Like right away, before he's colliding with everything. Brian Zimney went then through a bunch of videos and photos, and it doesn't look like he was normally a guy that wore his helmet too tight. So I don't know if that, didn't help the situation. Just, people wear. I've had on the start line, official come over and make me tighten it up. So, that's one thing to think about. Anyway.
Yeah. The lane question though is, so I think the operative part of the rule is endangering somebody else, because there's going to be interpretation based on that. Like, people deviate from their line because they're seeing cross-eyed and because they are really tired in their sprint, but they mean no harm. And I don't think anybody's going to get dinged for that, right? If you're just sprinting for fourth place, there's nobody else around you, but you're kind of erratic. You're not going to make friends in the peloton, but you're also not going to get relegated, I don't think. This seemed to me as though it was intentional by Groenewegen, because he knew that he was about to get beat.
I totally agree. Now there's intentional of, I'm shutting the door on you, which, have you ever done that?
Sure. But the shutting the door, so like that's also up for interpretation, right? Because I kind of touched on it earlier, which is like, if somebody is trying to occupy a favorable position in the sprint or leading into the sprint, you can take that spot to prevent them from doing it. And this is like a common trick. Like, let me give you an example. So this was High Road, the HTC High Road, like arguably the best lead out ever in the Pro Tour. They would use their lead out guys who were peeling off to take up space. So it's not like they're deviating from their line and putting other people in danger, but they are making it so, for example, they peel off, let's say it's a right-hander, they peel off to the left. So now Cavendish has the inside lane, not line, lane, we'll say.
Right. That's going to be the vernacular.
And then the peeling off rider is just to the left. So there's no space to pass them. So if you want to come around, you have to go around two riders into the wind along the longer leg of the corner. So there's ways to make this work without endangering somebody else. And I think that's probably what shutting the door, when people say shutting the door, that's probably what that means, is like preventing them from taking a better line. But if they've already committed to this line, you can't steer right in front of them to force them to squeeze their brakes. This isn't like football. This is a no contact sport.
Right. And I'll say I've had the door shut on me. Davis was one, the direction we were going last time I was there. It was counterclockwise through the start finish, and I'm trying to pass up on the right, and the guy knows I'm there, and he's just, the barrier. And so I had to slam on the brakes, and I just thinking of that, it's different slamming on your brakes and being in control when you're seated and when you're in a full sprint. I don't think Jakobsen, he's out of the saddle, grabbing your brakes in that concept that time is a much different little concept, I think, than just seated and being able to pull yourself back as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And these guys are sharks that have smelled blood, and he wasn't going to squeeze his brakes for anything, I don't think, because like I said before, he's got his livelihood on the line, and him crossing that finish line first is why he was hired in the first place. So he's going for it, and having that mentality is what makes a good sprinter. So you put two of them ahead, it's like
right.
It's going to end in disaster.
Brian Zimney says here, Groenewegen is looking up when he starts moving right. And this is what's interesting about being able to break all this down. Possibly, Brian, you could be right. I wasn't paying attention, and we don't know exactly what Groenewegen saw. Okay, so there was the Tour de France crash, Sagan and Cavendish, pretty famous, right? Yeah. And you look at that first thing, when I first tuned into the Tour of Poland, I got there late and I pulled it up and they were doing a slow-mo, and I was like, oh, that's horrific. And then they show it in full speed, and full speed is, I think, worse because you see an elbow come out of Groenewegen. You're like, oh, he flicked him into the barrier on purpose, which is kind of what you saw with Sagan. But then when you do slow-mo, Cavendish's brake hood is under his arm and it pulls up. So, things look a little different, but that's all happening right against these barriers. Any idea on thoughts on barrier, what the UCI or races can do with this? You're kind of a engineered type of mind. You thought about anything like this? Maybe it's your calling.
Not really. I mean, I've seen sketchy barriers where you can see the edge of the barrier. They should probably prevent that from happening. Do they determine where are people saying that the barriers were misplaced or they are causing undue harm or something?
So Robbie McEwen, who's been in his fair share of bad wrecks and does announcing now for Australia, he said that when he was racing, he had come up with a barrier design near the end of his career and submitted it to the UCI because he's like, he thinks with a good, not just necessarily his design, but with a good design, Jakobsen would have more bounced off of this and would have had, bikes still running over you, which is still better than meeting into an object that's not moving. So, that's his thought. Because he blew right. Even I look back at the Cavendish one today that they had at the Tour, and he hits the barrier very similar. He's out actually further, leans over into it, and hits it and comes back into the field of play, so to speak. So I think that would be a better thing than keeping them from obviously flying into cameras and other people.
Yeah, it certainly seems like there can probably be a better design. I've personally, knock on wood, I've never had a bad encounter with the barrier. I've leaned against them at San Rafael a couple of times and been really close. I've rolled over the feet of barriers. Yeah. Those, the vertical ones that aren't as good. I've rolled over the feet of barriers before, and that's kind of sketchy. That's not that uncommon, unfortunately. But if they're not a barrier, then they're not really doing their job, right? Yeah, could be. So, any other comments here? Now, Patrick Lefevre has gone out and he said, I go to court, this kind of actions has to be in, maybe it's his English. I go to court, this kind of actions have to be of cycling. This is a criminal fact, mister. So he's the DS for Deceuninck Quick Step. And I think he's what do you think of when you're out there racing? Are you thinking litigious and criminal actions on riders? Now we've seen, there's been some stuff that have happened, and whether it's, I don't know if it's UCI, but USA Cycling has had some incidences with some people. And I know Roberto Gaggioli, that was after a race, and there was another one, Kyle Legrand, and down in Visalia, that was after a race. But there was one, I'm trying to remember what it was, that was during a race of taking some riders out, and I think Creed and Rally were involved, or whatever they were at that point. But have you ever had any incidents that you thought was over the line like that? Yeah, there's people that have done things that I would deem as intentionally dangerous and harmful, and that's resulted in their relegation or disqualification. I've never seen or heard of that resulting in actual, like, a criminal case, but this is a thing in sport, right? Wasn't there something in football? I'm going to show how much I don't know about other professional sports. Wasn't there an issue in football where a guy stepped on another dude whose helmet fell off? He had cleats on. He stepped on his head. Right. That was, yes, exactly. Big lineman did that a few years ago, and someone might want to chime in to who that was. But on that aspect, so Chris Flower asked me today, he's like, hey, Lefevre, does he even have grounds standing to do this, to file a lawsuit? So I think what happened is Lefevre actually reported this as a criminal incident to the Polish police. So now they're investigating. That's no different than you seeing your neighbor, getting robbed, right? You can do that. I don't think a lawsuit's been filed. And if it is, you're looking at a tort of, a personal injury, negligence. And sports are rife with these kind of things. You've had, especially you think of hockey and football, those are kind of the ones, the seminal cases that have come about, and it's the assumption of the risk. You go out there and you participate. Everyone has duties to each other, but if you acted like boxing, just acted like that in a bar, you're going to be arrested for assault and battery, right? Yeah, it's interesting. But you can do that in sport. But now, are you expecting? Is it something that's beyond? And I think I had a little quote here about one of the cases here. The essence of the tort assumption of the risk is that the plaintiff should not be able to recover injuries caused by the plaintiff if he or she is willing to assume the risk of the inherent activity, which is we're all fine on. But it's when you go over and beyond, and you're not something that you don't expect to encounter with their duty of care in that sport. So
There's a few hockey ones. Mike, let's see if I have. Oh, Todd Bertuzzi, sucker punched the guy. He got 20 games. They get a little bit, but he also got assault and battery, and he got charged with that. Marty McSorley was in 2000. He hooked a guy with his stick, cut him up. He was done with his career, and he was 18 months of probation, found guilty of assault. So assault with a deadly weapon. So you can definitely have that. This is what Lefevre. Now I don't know Polish law. Maybe you do. Maybe have you ever been to Poland?
No, it turns out I don't know Polish law very well.
I don't either, but I would. Let's just take what we have and
sure.
Assume that it's similar. You're going to have to assume that Groenewegen knew what he was doing and that he intended to put Jakobsen into the barriers with this kind of outcome. And I can't see that. You would see much more different activity from that.
Yeah. I mean, you're the lawyer here, but I can't imagine that anybody would be able to say beyond a shadow of a doubt that he intended to hurt him. I think he intended to get in his way. I don't think that he wanted to hurt him and knock him off his bike. And I think that would be a hard case to make. Right. So Mark Tucker says, Mike Tyson biting Evander Holyfield's ear off. Yes, that's totally not expected, at least not in that sport, maybe roller derby. And then this guy, let's do this is, I don't know who, Jahumba, someone else. They're saying that was intentional. So let's talk about that. You think that it was intentional that he was, as we'll just use the word, closing the door. But do you think it was intentional of the outcome? So I haven't done the full race breakdown that it seems like the rest of the internet has. So I'm playing catch up here. But my first impression, we just watched it in slow-mo a few times. I watched it in real time a few minutes before coming on the show. To me, it looked like he intended to shut the door on him because he was like, oh, I'm about to lose. I better not allow him to pass me. And I don't think that he intended to crash him out. Yeah. Okay. I don't either. So therefore, what do you feel about, what do you think the UCI, and look, we're just two guys on the internet here. We're, Cat 1 racers in California, but we're pretending that we're in charge here. What do you think the UCI should do, first of all, for any kind of penalty for Groenewegen and his team, and then maybe any ideas about going forward of what we can kind of do for safety on this? Let me just say one more thing. I don't know if you saw, you said you haven't been watching much, but there was one of the first races they just had a few weeks ago. Guys come around to last corner, maybe 200 meters to go. There's a steel or like a big concrete pole in the middle of the course. So the UCI is fine with this, right? Yeah. But yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But if I were a UCI official just looking at this, I would think, yes, there was intent behind, they need to punish him. I don't think that he can continue racing. Did he continue racing? No. Well, they pulled out. First of all, he was DQ'd, and I think he was kicked out for the tour. And then his team said, they announced that they're not going to allow him to race until this is all figured out. And I think that's for the best, because I think it's more than anything. Yeah. Probably not good mentally for him. He's probably having a tough time with this, I'm assuming, unless, some people think he's all good with that. And then just, you're going to get hate from everybody too. So yeah, good move from the team. So there hasn't been a ruling from the UCI. You said they DQ'd him and they pulled him out of the race, but there's been nothing else. Right. So yeah, I think they should go ahead. I'd say they should probably, they need to make an example of him and say, like, this is unacceptable, because to me, there was intent behind it. Not to necessarily, like we said, crash him out, but to do something that put him in harm's way. So they should fine him or suspend him or do something like that. But they can't just say, okay, you're out of this race, and give him a little slap on the wrist. I think there needs to be more than that. Right. And Jason Graffath says, this armchair QB, that's according to him, give Dylan Groenewegen the rest of the year and maybe half of the year off. Okay. So here's part of my and I'm going to play both sides here. Part of my problem, what I see immediately, someone else in here is saying a few $100,000, like 20 grand. This was intentional. He's a bad guy, whatever. I think we are so in a spot that everyone should be safe, right? And we've seen that with even COVID stuff, right? We're worried about everything, but this is manifesting itself. I know he put Jakobsen in danger, but for the fact that maybe a bad barrier, you're not even having really this conversation. He's going to sit a year and a half out. So, wrecks have gone. I don't know if you've seen wrecks before. Jalabert hitting the policeman. Abdu Japarov has some famous. You can look at them all. And even the one with Cavendish. If you look at that one, if you actually watch Arnold Demar, who wins that stage,
his move to the left is much worse than Cavendish, but he's doing.
Is that funny? I noticed that same thing. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, that was funny that people don't often talk about. And then there's that headbutting incident in like
Robbie McEwen.
No, I think it was there? No, there was another one. I think. Yeah, we're talking about a different one. The one where what's his name? The Australian lead out guy for Cavendish gave a headbutt in the 2012 tour. I want to say.
Okay.
Something. I think it was
Renshaw.
Renshaw. Thank you.
Yeah.
Renshaw gave the headbutt to somebody, and he got DQ'd for it.
That's right.
And the funny part is like they laser focused on the headbutt, but moments later he pulled off and just went right. He looked back and then he went right in front of the guy that was trying to sprint up the inside. And it's like nobody talked about that. That was the dangerous move. And before I forget, I want to say, you brought up a good point. I just don't want to forget it. I want to. It's worth repeating. Had Jakobsen used the brakes and then done like the classic cyclist gesture, like "What are you doing?" and throw a hand up, this would have been a completely different story. Is it any less dangerous? No, it resulted in a crash. So everyone's obviously focused on it. But if he would have squeezed brakes and threw a hand up, Groenewegen would have been relegated to the back of that bunch. Jakobsen would have been given the win, and then we would have just wiped our hands of this whole thing and move on to the next stage.
Right. That's very true. And it would have obviously been a safer thing. He just needed to do the flop like they do in soccer or Vlade Divac, old basketball. So, and you know what? It's always interesting because, and I've been glad over the years that they pulled the trigger on those kind of things, right? When someone deviates and a guy throws his arm, it's usually like Bahani or someone that's complaining outrageously for no reason. But when these other guys do it,
he's such an actor. That guy.
He is, and he'll wipe, do the same things. But when they do, they've relegated guys, and I think that's great to try to get them straighter. Because once again, you go back there, a guy, one of these wrecks that I just watched it again today. I think it was Jalabert, or no, it was Abdjaparov. It's the final stage of the Tour de France, and the road is so wide, and they're deviating, and there's no reason to do that. So let's see if we've got any more comments here. Chris Flower says, just outlined dying in bike races. Okay, well, no more dying, people. I don't know that Jakobsen has dead. So what do you think about this one? The downhill bike races. Should we outlaw downhills in bike races because people have died? No, but
well, I think he's being facetious.
He doesn't have any humor in him, so no, just kidding. No, but what about go ahead.
Oh, you mentioned the road furniture in some of the classics, and I think that is a place where they can do better, because it seems like every year there's an incident with a bollard right in the middle of a road or something like that. And sometimes it's due to the rider not paying attention, but like a lot of times if you look at it, you're like, oh, these guys have to, it's like a 7-hour classics ride, and then they have to be laser focused the entire time. Make it really obvious. There has to be a marshal on every one of those things way far in advance. But no, you can't abolish downhills. Like, obviously that's a big part of the sport, bike handling.
Right. No,
just
I'm totally in agreement. But what about some of the crazy finishes? We've seen these. I think the Giro will be typical of like a corner right before the finish on a big sprint. This one having this massive downhill where the guys are saying, some of them are running ridiculous chain rings and stuff just to get it going. And, they're doing very fast speeds. And I guess, different towns, you kind of want to have it put into a finish line at a certain spot. So I guess there's things they can maybe kind of do there. So
yeah, corner right before the finish is terrifying. Even the stuff we have, I don't know if it's as extreme as some of the big World Tour stages where there's been complaints, but like, yeah, if you have a corner 50 meters, a tight, tightly radiused corner 50 meters before the finish, it's just who's willing to take the most risk into that corner. And that's not necessarily good sport, because you're going to get a pileup. And I think that they secretly want there to be a pileup in that final corner for the publicity. The 90s, was it 90? Yeah. How old I am. We used to come out and do, it was called the Sequoia Cycling Classic. It's Visalia. They had the same crit course, and then some road race. They would put in the newspaper, it was last turn. They put, hey, this is the corner to come sit on because that's where all the crashes are. And they put bleachers up there, and you would have, crash every race, just have a big crash in this corner.
and people enjoyed it. And that's kind of gladiators, I guess we are. But, I mean, look, some of these, the tour, some of these big, UCI stage races, you don't need to have that kind of thing for finish. I don't want to say that you do for other sports or for other categories, but it's just not quite the same speed. It's not quite the same power. And especially in America, we have, typically much wider roads and stuff as well. So let's see if there's any other good comments, because I say good because not all these are that great.
Wait, internet comments aren't all fantastic?
Right. Let's see if I didn't even read this. In 1965, Giants pitcher Juan Marcial, hit Dodgers catcher in the head with a bat at least twice, drawing blood and requiring 14 stitches. No criminal charges. Well, it was 1965. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's update a little bit. So, crazy. Have you followed World Tour racing much other than that? This little incident, and if not, why not? What's your problem?
I've been making content, man.
Okay, well, tell us about what kind of content's coming up.
Oh, well, I always have the old standby. I have a lot of race analysis to get to. For those of you who sent race footage in, just be patient. I'm getting to it. I love talking about bike racing. So I always have those, and then have a couple of other things going on that aren't final yet. So I won't spoil it, but just some cool kind of narrative content where I'm trying to tell a story or do a test, and I just want to inform and educate and have fun. Bike should be fun, and that's kind of like the point of that narrative content that I like putting together. How's your riding been going over the since March, since we shut down? Yeah. I was going good early this year. I only did a couple of races and had a win and had a podium and had a lot of fun doing it. And the fitness was on track. And then it kind of kept going after the initial kind of March round of shelter in place. And I was still highly motivated because I thought, just like everybody else, so hopefully this blows over. And then, I don't know, in June or so, I'd kind of lost motivation, stopped riding for a while. And I got back to it just because I like racing. I don't need it to stay motivated, but I was looking forward to racing this year. So I kind of got back into it in the last couple of weeks, but it's been hard. It's been hard. It's the first time in almost a decade where I haven't done racing. It's weird. When you have a young child, so is that causing you any other reasons to just not get out and ride then, or you just? Well, of course, yeah. Of course, I mean, when I get out, my time is limited. I'm still working from home. Have a family, have a young daughter, and so every time I get out, I try to make the most of it. And I've crafted a pretty good training plan on like how to make the most out of 6 to 8 hours a week, and that's kind of how I get by. Part of it is that I focus on crits. Right. Well, that's all I've done. I've doubled, maybe tripled my training time, so I have not been this fit in a long time. But I'm eating more, so I'm not really correlating that as well. So, this gentleman or lady, I'm not sure it's a name I probably can't pronounce. How many watts can you do? What's your all of
watt
them?
max?
All of them. Can do all of the watts. Yeah. I think that was the quote I think Chris Reichert gave us at one point when I interviewed him at Chico. All the watts. So all of them. Yeah. Don't leave any behind. Take them all with you. That's good to know. Okay, so you've got that going on. How about, let me ask you this. I know you know about professional cycling. So this week, we want to make sure everyone knows this. Last week, I picked Strada Bianca winner, Wout van Aert, just yay for me. Milan-San Remo's coming up. Would you like to throw your hat in the ring about who, and by the way, Wout's my rider of the week for last week. Just throw him. Annemiek van Vleuten did the last 20 some K of Strada Bianca, I think at the same, like top 3 of everybody that's ever done that, at least with Strava. So she obviously is a person to think of there too. And then Brett Brookwalter was in that top section as well. He was 7th overall, and I guess he just flew in the last thing. But do you have a pick for Milan-San Remo? And I know you follow cycling at least enough to throw a name out there, right? Yeah. I followed enough to throw a name out there. And I'll take Alaphilippe. I assume he's racing it, right? Yeah. He is on the list. So Alaphilippe. I'm actually going to go. Chris Flower wanted to put in his. He texted. You're taking Chris Flower for Chris Flower for the win. He's been bulking up for the downhill. He wanted to do Caleb Ewing, which I think is a good one. As soon as he gets over there, I'm going to go with the. This is the COVID survivor. It's Gaviria. He had COVID. He survived. He's already did he really? Yeah.
early on. He's like, I tested positive. Couldn't really tell I had it. So he was one of those guys. So yeah, I think he was
he's stronger because of it. He's supercharged now.
Right. He might be. Yeah, he's got, well, you know, what's interesting. You watch it. He was in Burgos. I think that's where he won a stage, and everyone else has masks. He has a basically a certificate of freedom, I would call it, from the UCI, that he does not have to wear a mask. He doesn't have to, you know, whatever. He's golden boy.
I'm wondering how this is going to play out. You know, my coworker, he really early on, like back in like March or something. I don't want to get too sidetracked here. Sorry, but he got flu-like symptoms, and it was right when this thing was taken off. And he's like, "Oh my God, I think I have it." And he went and got tested. And by the time he got the results back, his symptoms were already going away. So I was like, "Dude, you better hope that you had it, because then you're off the leash." And he's like, "No, I didn't have it." So unfortunately for him, it was just like the regular seasonal flu.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I would be interested in some of those people that are tested early on. You know, the testing, I think, has gotten better. There was, you know, some error rate that may have been a little higher, especially to begin with. So maybe he needs to go back and check out his antibodies. So who did you pick? Alaphilippe?
Alaphilippe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just one other thing here, and I know there's been some bad blood back and forth here. Bradley Wiggins, just a news story here. Bradley Wiggins backs Chris Froome to win the 5th Tour de France. What's your take on that?
Oh, I guess I could wait. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of like panache, you know, like he's not exciting to watch. Of course, the Giro thing was pretty amazing, and he had a moment of like crazy glory, but I want to see like the underdog. I don't know. I'm tired of seeing like
who's the underdog then this year?
Oh,
isn't he the ultimate underdog this year?
Because of his new team.
Well, he's not on there yet, right? But he's, you know, Bernal's won. He's, you know, helping him out in the Alline or whatever it was the other day. He had that fake crash, you know, where he took out on the Dauphiné last year. Is Froome not an underdog? And then who would be your thought for the Tour this year?
I'm not good at this game, but I'll make a comparison. I probably won't be able to say a name, but like one of my favorite tours, and probably I'm a little biased because I was actually there to watch it. But when oh my God, the
Armstrong one.
No, the the true underdog.
Right.
No, when the Australian won in 2011. Why is his name not coming to me?
Evans. Cadel Evans.
Thank you. Cadel Evans. Yeah. That was a lot of fun to watch because he felt like an underdog. He took it on the last day. And that was exciting because it wasn't just like the big team with the big marquee rider taking the yellow jersey on the 3rd day and then just holding it to the end. So I don't know. I want to see some drama, I guess. I don't really care who wins, even if it's Froome or whatever other favorite there is. I just want to see a little bit of drama, and I want to see like a story play out, like somebody coming back from way behind, like Froome did in the Giro. That was cool because he had a rough start and then he kind of clawed his way back. That was exciting to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mark Tucker wants to know, and is Alviso still Alviso's happening this Tuesday?
Dude, bigger numbers than ever. Head out there. You won't see me out there. The numbers. Speaking of numbers, the COVID numbers are coming down. So hopefully I'll be back out there soon. Trust me, guys. I am chomping at the bit. I want to get back out there, but my living situation is not. It's not good. It would be unreasonable for me to go out there. It'd be unfair for me to go out there, but pretty soon I'll be back out there. Yeah. So yeah, the answer is yes. There's a lot of people.
Good. And so, I hope obviously we want this pandemic thing to get over and people to get out and ride. I push for, whatever you're doing, get some sunlight, get some vitamin D, and make your own health as good as you can be. I mean, that's one thing. I'm not a doctor, but it seems logical to me to have that. And so I've been getting outside and doing the best I can. What's your favorite race that you're looking forward to, pro race this year? And then what race would you like to see in California before the end of the year?
Okay. Before the end of the year in California?
Yeah. Like of the rest of the calendar. If you had one race in California to do this year, they're like, hey, this is going to be the only race. Matter of fact, it'll be district or, state criterium or state road. What's kind of your pick for that you'd want to do? And then what's a race in the world tour that you want to see?
I would love to, I'd love to go do Cat's Hill. We have gone a couple of years now without it. And to be honest, the funny part about that is like, it's a little bit too hard of a race for me. But I feel like my fitness has gotten better and I've been smarter about positioning and things like that. So, and I tell myself this every time we do Catsill, but I'm like, this is my year because I want it as a 3. But I would love to do Catsill, even though I don't think that it might be a little too hard for me. But that would be a lot of fun. Also, I love Santa Cruz. Both of those races are awesome, and I'm bummed to miss them.
You did well there last year. I'm trying to remember. I was there in that race momentarily. I'd done the Masters earlier. Anyway, yeah, actually 2 of my favorite races. Well, Catsill especially, I really do like that one. What about a World Tour race? What do you want to see this year? What are you excited to see? And obviously you haven't watched anything. So what's something that you may gradually just tune into?
So is the tour still happening? This is how how out of touch, how ignorant I am.
Tour's happening first at the end of the month, and then they're the Giro, and then the Vuelta, and they're kind of overlapping. I mean, everything's just crammed in there. It's classics. You pick a race, throw a name on the board, and you're there. Part
of me is really excited to see the tour. I'm usually more of a classics. I enjoy watching the classics more. Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah.
I enjoy the heck out of that, but that's one day, and I need my fill on watching bike racing. So part of me is excited to see a crazy month or 2 of like World Tour stages where I get a nice feed, a slow drip of content every single day.
Right. Well, it's not a slow drip right now. Everything is just coming at us like a big water through a pipe. It's huge amount for us right now. So, okay. So before you go, any other last comments or anything you want to push or plug?
No, I don't know. I'm coming out with content pretty soon, that I'm excited about, and that I'm going to have a lot of fun making, that hopefully if you guys enjoy, just, let me know which kind of direction you guys want to see. If you want to see more bike racing content, I have plenty of that. Or if you want to see more of the kind of the testing and narrative style content that I come out with, I enjoy doing both. So just check out my channel, NorCal Cycling, and let me know.
The one video I watch of yours every few months, I go back and see it again. You're not going to probably appreciate that as much as I do. Is how to do overlays on a video. Yeah. So I'm like, oh yeah, the green screen. Oh yeah, dashware or the whatever. So every once in a while I go back. I just keep that one saved, and you've helped me many times. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being on the show today. And enjoy the people coming in the chat. So you brought them out. We got more viewers today. We got people. We're trying to do this every Friday at 1:30. So any other time you want to join in, you have some more stuff to say, we'll bring you in as well too, Jeff.
I'll be better prepared next time. Thanks, Tyler.
Better prepared. You were doing just fine. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. Between Two Wheels podcast, episode 186. Check us out. Like I said, we're on the iHeartRadio app now. So check us out. We're everywhere. So once again, thanks, Jeff, and have a good weekend.
Later, guys.